Hi, I'm Aldo. Welcome to Plays the Thing, the channel where I share my experiences prepping and playing tabletop role playing games. This video is part two of a series on the Sentinels of Justice, which is a superhero game that I'm running using the Champions Now rules. Champions Now, of course, is the superhero game written by Ron Edwards and published by Hero Games. The first video in the series covered my use of the two statements rule that is presented in Champions Now for kicking off campaigns and the way that I use that rule to start this specific campaign. This video is actually an addendum to that video because I forgot to mention two basic assumptions that a game master that's looking to kick off a Champions Now game should keep in mind, and I think present to the players in very specific terms. And those assumptions are as follows. One, you are making a hero. And two, the character that you create, the hero that you create, will be a part of a team. Now, those basic assumptions might seem so basic that it's silly for me to be creating a video about being so forward about that. But one of the things that I've learned through experience is that you really actually do have to spell something out that's that basic. And I know this because it actually needed to be spelled out to me. You see, a lot of the superhero fiction that we consume these days is very much focused on the origin story, right? Entire movies, 2 hour movies are dedicated to origin stories. Entire first seasons of a series are dedicated to origin stories. And sometimes, even if after a character is established, it's almost like we have to go back and almost reconsider the origin story. It's a strange thing that I hadn't noticed until actually Ron spoke to that very directly in the Champions Now rules. And I guess I hadn't appreciated how much that way of telling superhero stories had worked itself into my subconscious because when Ron Edwards uh, offered to run a little bit of Champions Now for me about a year ago now, he presented me with two statements, and I went to interpret them and to come up with a character. And I presented a character that wasn't quite ready to be a hero in a lot of ways, right? It was a character that had a lot of stuff going on in their lives, in their life, but that stuff was not actually yet activated, right? It was like a hero, maybe, waiting to happen, depending on how things in his life might get prodded. Without realizing, I had made somebody who was not yet a hero. And Ron had to sit me down after I turned in my three corner sheet, which I'll talk about what those are in the next video. But after I had basically presented my character concept in response to the two statements, he basically took me aside and gently and kindly said, part of the problem here is that this guy's not really a hero. And that's actually kind of your job when you respond to the two statements is to come up with a hero. Now, don't get me wrong or Ron Edwards wrong. Like he's not saying that a hero has to be in any particular way or behave in any particular way or think in any particular way. He's not saying that there are things that heroes do and things that heroes don't do, and that right heroes do these things, and and so on and so forth. It's not about being um, about reducing the definition of a hero, but it is to say that the character you make should have strong opinions, whatever those opinions are, should have strong drives, whatever those drives are, and they're all ready to jump into action to act on those opinions and those drives and those motivations, right? That's the fundamental thing. They have to be ready to act. The assumption is that when we start playing, your character is a fully formed hero. And that's because the fiction that Ron is harkening back to are the comics of the 1930s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, which really operated that way, right? Origin stories were a matter of a couple of panels or maybe a page. and then we were right into the action. And that's how Ron wrote Champions Now. Um, so it was, I'm not going to say it was embarrassing for me, but it was humbling for me to realize that I could fall into that trap. And I know that a lot of my players can also fall into that trap. I've seen them fall into that trap before. Um, so I I intend to always be very upfront about that when I present two statements to everybody, to a group of players, or potential players, and to remind them that that's what they have to do: make a hero. The second thing, that about making sure that the players know that when we start, they're already going to be members of a superhero team. Just like we're not going to belabor a hero's origin story, we're not going to belabor the origin story of the hero team. We're not going to sit down to play to see if this group of characters just kind of becomes a team, maybe somehow over the course of play. No, we are starting play with them already as a superhero team. And the backstory of that will kind of emerge during play, maybe through flashbacks, maybe through details that get revealed here and there, one at a time. But the two statements will always have served to orient characters towards this kind of uh you know loose core, right, that a Champions Now game should have. And they're jumping into the action as a fully formed team right from the beginning. And I have run games, superhero games, that have failed because players make characters that are more loner than anything else, and need to be convinced over the course of play that they should be a team. And that's not what this game is about. So that's it. These two basic assumptions: you're making heroes, and they're going to be members of the team, and they're going to be those things from the get-go in the campaign, right? Those are the two basic assumptions that I wish I had mentioned either prior to or in my last video. Here I am mentioning them now. I'll come back soon with a video that comes back to the two statements and what happens after you've presented the two statements, and are receiving what Ron calls the gift of of the the initial concepts for characters from the players. All right. So until then, I wish you good health. I wish you good cheer, and I wish you good gaming. Goodbye.